Have you read
universal.
the whole Bible, by the way?
I did when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I actually had Bible class in Florida. When I moved from San Francisco to Florida, I was 11 years old, and it was a complete polar opposite experience of the country. I lived in San Francisco with two parents that were hippies in Haight-Ashbury. So we were in the middle of, like, we lived near Lombard Street. We were in the middle of, like, the hippie anti-war revolution of the 1960s. And then I moved to Gainesville, Florida. My stepdad was going to, he was becoming an architect. He was a computer programmer, and then he switched careers, became an architect. And so he was going to a University of Florida at Gainesville. And so we were there. So now all of a sudden I'm around alligators. There's fucking alligators everywhere. It was like, are you people retarded? Why do you have giant monsters everywhere? This is so ridiculous. So we had alligators, super weird, swampy weather, and religion. Yeah. Religion was in the schools. Like in public school, you had Bible class. And they also paddled you. It was the first time I'd ever been hit by a teacher.
In Florida.
I got in this fist fight with this kid, and they whacked us with a paddle.
One of the things that a lot of people who have read the Bible, or they have read a portion of the Bible,
I definitely don't think I read the whole thing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is not very many people do, and that's why I asked, because a lot of it is kind of tedious history, and there's a lot of he begats, and there's the whole line, of Christ, all the ancestors, and the whole delineation of all that, and where I come from, we were encouraged to read like a verse of the Bible, but they would always tell you what it meant.
Right.
And so I kind of went against, I used this little pen light and like did it like late at night, but I read the whole thing cover to cover when I was 8. And if you read like every single book in order, you start to find that there's a lot of really beautiful, places in the Bible, but there's a lot of stuff that's really violent. And then there's a lot of stuff that contradicts itself.
The Bible is a compilation of texts written by multiple authors over many centuries in the ancient Near East. Its books underwent a long process of canonization and translation into the modern biblical canon.
And it's because it was written in different time periods by different authors in different languages, and it also has a historical context. And so generally there's a lot of stuff that people leave out when they teach the Bible because it's really hard to explain.
Like what stuff?
Well, there's, for example, this one's taught a little bit, but King David, I'm sure you've heard of him, like as of David and Goliath, but then he became a powerful king. And he saw this woman is often talked about, Bathsheba. He sees her bathing on a roof. And where we came from, we were taught like she shouldn't have been bathing on the roof. Now, right. Anyway, he demands that she come to him, and she is the wife of a soldier of his named Uriah, a top soldier, and he commands her to lie with him, and she becomes pregnant. And then King David, who is the same guy who had the slingshot of David and Goliath, decides that he's got to figure out how to get her husband back so that her husband can go sleep with her, and her husband won't do it because he's loyal to the army, and he comes back, but he sleeps like at the floor of the castle, trying to...
Wait a minute, he's trying to get the husband to go back with the wife?
So that the pregnancy will seem like it's his.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So
in the Bible?
In the Bible.
Dirty David.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't even end there. So Uriah won't do it because Uriah is loyal to David.
Oh, boy.
And so then David sends him to the front lines to have him be killed.
Oh, boy.
So that he can marry his wife and get away with that child's not being a bastard child, illegitimate.
Oh, boy.
And then God kills the child because, needs to make the point that David was... And think about poor Bathsheba. She's just been, rung around. Her husband gets killed, all these things. Her kid dies because God is punishing David.
And her husband got killed because he was loyal to the guy who got her pregnant.
Absolutely. That's not a story a lot of people hear.
Oh, my God.
But you can fact check that one if you'd like.
Oh, no, I believe you. I'm good at that. I'm good at just, I'll go argue it.
Want to hear another Bible story?
The Old Testament narratives discussed, like David and Bathsheba, are complex stories that reflect the cultural norms and perspectives of their eras in ancient Israel. They have been subject to much scholarly analysis and debate.
Sure.
There was a woman named Tamar, and she had been married to one of 3 sons. I think there was 3. And her husband died before giving her a child. So, as was the custom in the time, and perhaps the law, she married the brother of her dead husband. And that man would not give her a child because he didn't want to have a child in his brother's name. And so they're allowed to have more than one wife. But this woman was not allowed to have a child. So he does something they call onanism. So he like spilled his seed on the ground instead of inside of her so that she couldn't have a baby. And so God gets really mad because Onan will not impregnate her. And so Onan gets killed too. And so then her father-in-law decides not to marry her off to the youngest brother because two of the brothers are already dead, right? And he doesn't want to lose his only son. So he just banishes her, and she has nothing, because what does a woman have at the time if she doesn't have a husband or a child? She has no ability to make a living in the world. And so this man is, the father-in-law is really unkind to her in a way that she decides she needs to take something into her own hands. And so she dresses up like a prostitute and goes to the side of the road. And as he's traveling on the road, she puts herself in front of him and offers her services, and he sleeps with her, and he does not have payment on him for some reason. And so he gives her his staff, which is a token of his word or something. So at least he's paying his prostitute. And she gets pregnant from this, and he orders her, when he finds out she's pregnant, to be stoned to death, to be killed and executed because, she's not allowed to have a baby outside of wedlock. And she said, okay, but let me just return this staff to you that I got from the father of the baby. And so then he ends up protecting her, and she gets to have the child, and that child is in the line of Christ.
Whoa.
Yeah. So really interesting things. I don't know what you're supposed to learn from that story. When I was a kid reading this, I would ask, and of course, no one really wanted to tell me because she was rewarded for that. That's
the treatment of certain issues like the role of women and slavery in the Bible have led to vigorous discussion among religious and academic scholars about how to interpret these texts through modern ethical lenses.
Interesting thing.
It's the stories are crazy. It's just, if you're being honest and if you believe in God, but you also know that people are full of shit, you have to put all this stuff through a filter. You just have to. And it doesn't mean that there's no God.
Of course.
It doesn't mean that. It means there's probably something in these stories, but we have to be real careful with what that something is.
Well, and I don't profess to know. I don't know why.
They condone slavery. The Bible
Sure.
condones slavery, like flat out. It's in there all the time. It's like
Yes.
women are essentially second-class citizens. And you know what I found out recently? That there was a woman before Eve.
Depending on who you ask.
Yeah. So what was that one?
Well, that's not in the 66 books of the Bible that most people are taught in the Protestant tradition, or the 69 or whatever in the Catholic tradition. That's part of the Apocrypha. So these are books of the Bible that didn't make it into, Christianity as such that we
The editor's
follow
cut.
today. Yeah, it was an editor's cut, exactly.